With a career that spans all these great roles, what's the one thing that most fans stop you and want to ask about?
Oh, well, they just, well, there's a lot of Chianti and fava beans. I definitely get a lot of that where somebody, asks if I want some Chianti, so a nice Chianti or something. And I love it. I have to say, I really love that Silence of the Lambs has entered into kind of like, this cult status or something that people refer to it that has this reference in people's lives. I love it. I mean, it was a film that I'm proud of.
See, I would have went with Nell.
You would have gone with Nell, really? Okay, cool. Yeah, I've never. My kids have never seen Nell, and I plan to never have them see the film because I know they will tease me mercilessly. It's a performance I'm proud of, and it took some bravery, I guess, on my part to let it all hang out a little bit and to be vulnerable like that. But not everybody responded to that movie.
But I mean, I would have to say that you've been brave and pretty much everything you do, you're brave in. I don't know if it's just one or two different parts that you're referring to, but you always seem to take a risk. You're very selective about what you do.
I am selective. So it means if I go out, a lot less often than most people, I do tend to get obsessed with it. And I feel like I bring a lot to the table because there's a lot of pressure that I put on myself. A lot of work that I do to make sure that I give 100 million%. But that also means I can't make as much as other people.
But that's okay. You don't want to make everything. You want to make the right thing.
Right. And I worked a lot when I was young. I went back to back from movie to movie when I was a kid, and I had that life. And it's not really my personality. And as I got older, I grew to understand how important it was for me to have time for myself, for my family, to be a friend, to learn things, to educate myself, so that I had something to say. Sometimes I feel like if you just go from movie to movie, the only thing you know anything about is like the perfect cappuccino. That's pretty much the only thing that you know anything about.
Yeah, well, I, this may seem off the beaten path, but I really want to know what inspires you as an artist when it comes to picking stories that you want to get into.
It's kind of like it's a combination of being curious about things in the world and curious about psychology and about why people do what they do and how they affect each other. And then there's just this emotional instinct when you're reading a script and you just don't understand why you can't stop thinking about it or why you're so moved by it. And I always follow that. I really do try to follow that instinctual unconsciousness. And by the end of the movie, I think that I've figured out what it was that I had to get from the movie. But then by the time I see the film, I realize it was something totally different. It's always a very expansive experience where I'm always learning something more, not just about myself, but about other people.
Well, the film's fantastic. Your performance is fantastic. I mean, just blew me away. The whole cast, the ensemble, we could go on and on about that. But I want to know, for someone who is so selective about what you put out there, what was it about Kevin's script that spoke to you that made you want to go for it?
Well, Kevin's script was much bigger, right? It was much more expansive, and that was hard because you had to try to start figuring out what to take out. And there were a lot of things that were extraneous. They were interesting, but they were kind of extraneous, and they didn't have to do with Mohamedou. And so that was really what we worked on in terms of developing the screenplay, was just to say, like, okay, that's not important because it's not about Mohamedou. That's not important because it's not about Mohamedou. And I think that what emerged finally when we went to a shooting draft, and then of course finally when you see the film, is that it really prioritizes this idea of this man who took this experience that could have broken someone, and he became a better person. He became more forgiving, more loving, more open, more vulnerable, and more joyful. And that was my question, is like, would I be that, or would I be angry and resentful? Would I be able to find that humanity in myself? Those are the questions that you ask.
And that's the beauty of the film, in my opinion. And that's why I thought it was in a way uplifting, because you see that someone finds the humanity that's out there in even the worst of situations, Miss Foster. So, in terms of preparation, how did you prepare for this role for someone like Nancy Hollander, who really was vilified for what she did, and and that's the only way I could put it. So, what was your preparation?
Yeah, she was vilified, and there's a part of her that feeds on that. You know, she's an activist. She's a social justice hero and has been for a very long time. Certainly was a great activist for Vietnam and, or, you know, against the Vietnam War. And she really believes that governments need to be challenged, that authority and domination, dominant bodies, dominant systems need to be challenged, and that's how they find justice, is in that balance. And she kind of gets off on that. I think she loves being the spoke in the wheel. You know, that being said, there were things that needed to change a little bit about her. I mean, I loved her nail polish and her lipstick, and how she was these whole bunch of contradictions. She loves to drive race cars and do all that crazy stuff. But I did want to make her slightly more fierce in the beginning, a little bit more rude and defended, suspicious, so that she would have some place to go and grow from, through her relationship with Mohamedou. So that's a little bit different. Like, she's not as mean as my Nancy is.
Why did the nail polish matter to you? Just out of curiosity.
Well, that's just one of those things. Like, if normally I would never have made that choice for the character, but that's who she is. Like, she does not leave the house without that lipstick or the nail polish. And there's something funny about that, about her, that it's like she has to put on like a military outfit. You know, she's got to put on this covering, this thing of like, you will not take my femininity away from me. No matter what I'm doing, you will not take that. I am going to shop. I don't care what university I graduated from. I am going to shop, you know. It's almost like she's protesting too much. And I thought that was an interesting thing about her.
So what you're saying is Nancy Hollander and my wife would be best friends.
Yeah, she's a pretty cool lady. I have to say, she's a wonderful woman, and very fun. You know, it's really fun watching Mohamedou and Nancy together, because they are kind of like an old married couple. He loves to tease her. He loves to tease her about everything, from what she wears to what she says to how serious she is. You know, and she gets annoyed by him, and she's kind of swats him away, and he's always late, and she's like nagging about what time it is. And it was just really cute. They were like, just like an old married couple. It's cute.
Did you make a choice going into the shooting of staying away from Tahir, to kind of have that content, sort of like that unfamiliarity in the beginning, and build towards what you're referring to sort of in the end, where they were, they were
Uh,
one?
You know, not really. You know, all actors work differently, and sometimes you get given a circumstance, and that's like the way it is. For example, Anthony Hopkins and myself, like, we were kind of never in the same room for some reason. I'm not sure why that happened, but it just happened that we didn't get to talk to each other at all. And then we got kind of scared of each other, and then the movie was over, and we realized, like, oh my God, we've been scared of each other the whole movie. But with Tahar, you try to respect other actors' boundaries and what they need. I'm one of those people, because I've worked for so long, don't really have a lot of training. You know, I'm happy to drink coffee with everybody. I don't really need, like, I've learned how to create focus systems for myself. But I could tell that Tahar does. I think it was a very difficult role that he was undertaking, and he really needed his space and his time. And both Shailene and I really understood that. And it was fun to kind of Shailene was kind of like my partner in crime. And we spent a lot of time together on set, and of really just understanding that we had to hold space for him so that he could have that moment.
You made reference to like your own systems. Like, can you
Yeah.
give an example of like how you get into that headspace before they say action?
You know, because I started when I was 3, for me, it's like, it's something I've always done. So it's not something that takes a lot of work, and I'm somebody who I can focus, like intensely focus for a long period of time, but then I need to, drink a coffee and have a break. Um, I know that about myself. So I you know, it's just every dumb thing you can think of. Like, I don't ever really look at myself in the mirror ever during the day. Like, that's just something I will never do. Because I think it's weird for you to be conscious of what you look like, or, you know, if I'm doing an accent, I come up with one sentence that has all the little R's and T's and S's that I need to remember. And then the way that I get into that is that I just say that sentence to myself before I start shooting. I say it a couple of times and then like, okay, I got the accent. You know, you just come up with little things like that. You know about yourself.
Did you draw from any prior roles for this particular one, or was this just a unique experience all around?
No, I don't think I did draw. I mean, I think you just do what's right for that character, and sometimes it requires a lot of work. You know, some characters take a lot of work. Something, you know, like Silence of the Lambs was a lot of research and spending a lot of time just knowing, you know, knowing what autopsies are, and you know, knowing how to hold a gun, and knowing what fingerprinting is, and knowing how to, you know, what the process of psychological profiling is. But then something like The Accused took, you know, I just need to like go to a couple clubs and have some drinks and dance around. That was pretty much it. My entire preparation for that role. It just depends. Each role is different. I think in this one, it was really just spending time with Nancy and reading those books.
What did she get? Like, what pearls of wisdom did you get from her? Or was it just being around her that helped shape what you did on screen?
I got a lot of tidbits. Really, it was really just the setting the stage for what it felt like to be in Guantanamo. That was, I think, what we spent the most amount of time on, was just like, you know, where did you go to eat, and who did you eat with, and you know, how much time did you spend alone, and you know, what did you pack, and what was it like in the cell, you know, all that kind of stuff. But mostly it was just watching her talk about Mohamedou and why she cared about him, and what she, you know, what she thought of him. And also interesting to find out what Mohamedou thought of Nancy. You know, Mohamedou was like, he thought she was like tough and had no heart. I mean, he was scared of her and thought she was not compassionate, and in the beginning. And he thought Terry Duncan, of course, was, you know, full of heart, and she was just, you know, that was the person that he could relate to. And the truth is that both of those women have a little bit of that. And as time has gone on, he's learned that they both have equal parts to them.
Is she more empathetic, or is she driven by justice in this instance?
I think she has a lot of motivations, and they kind of get wound up together. I mean, I think she's driven by justice first and foremost, and I think to her that's fun. It's a, you know, winning in the social justice world is having meaning. You know, when you win, you have meaning. And then I think the empathy and her really coming to care for Mohamedou kind of snuck up on her. It happened over time, and it didn't happen immediately. I don't think she was empathic with him immediately. I think she assumed, like most of her clients, I think she assumed he probably was guilty of something, and that it was just a question of finding out what, you know, so that she could defend him. As she says, and she'll say this to you if you ever meet her, she'll say, "Oh, I don't care if they're guilty or not guilty." She said, "In fact, it's easier for me. It's easy for me to do my job if they're guilty." And I think that she says that because she likes to shock people, and she likes to see their face when they say that. And I think it does matter to her somewhere, but she's done it for so long that she's kind of created this very protective layer of compartmentalization.
You would have to think so after going through what she went through in this experience. I'd have a layer of protection. I mean, my Lord, going to Guantanamo, being in those cells. I mean,
Yes, and he's not her only client. I mean, she has,
right.
you know, a lot of very very tough people.
I mean, I know, I know it had to be hard on to hear psychologically what he went through, but did it take a toll on you having to go through this process? You know, the pushing for justice, and knowing that the story, your client in this story is basically getting waterboarded, tortured, this whole thing. I mean, it would be hard not to develop some sort of attachment, whether it was a film or, yeah, obviously in real life as it played out.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we are aware that we're in a movie, right? And we hope that we're illuminating these facts so that it can help someone, and so that other people don't have to go through this, and so that justice is done. And there's a satisfaction to that, right? The same way that Mohamedou is able to heal through his experience of being a part of this movie, the real Mohamedou. I mean, I think that it will come full circle for him, and he will have a real feeling of democratic justice, that justice was done, not because he isn't damaged, not because he can ever take back those years that he lost, his relationship with his mother who died while he was in prison. He was never able to see her again, or, you know, the part of his life that's lost, that he'll never be able to travel, or any number of things. But he was heard, and that means something. And making this movie and having people see his story and having people understand him in a much more full way, not just as some cardboard cutout of a Muslim man terrorist. I think that's important to him.
It's also important that people see that justice isn't, you know, justice isn't just a thing. Justice applies to all people and of all backgrounds, no matter what preconceived notions we have. And I think that you display that beautifully through your through being, you know, obviously this character. And by the way, this is the first real life character you've done in your career?
Second. The first real life one, she'd already been dead a couple hundred years, so it didn't really matter if I took any licenses. Yeah, I mean, I think that Benedict's character, you know, Colonel Couch, he's also very helpful because he's another side of justice, right? He's the prosecutor. He's representing the military. He's somebody who has an axe to grind. You know, he came with some baggage because his friend was killed in 9/11, and you know, he wants to find that this guy's guilty so that he can. That's his idea of justice. But he, as a man of honor, as a man of the military, as a man of the law, is not willing to throw the Constitution out the window in order to exact revenge. And he did the honorable thing, which is to resign, even though his, you know, his political views are completely antithetical to Nancy's. They agree on that point. And he says, which I think is the best line in the movie, and it came right out of the real Couch's mouth, when he said, look, you find evidence that links Slahi to 9/11, and I'll put the needle in his arm myself. It wasn't like he was against punishment, against the death penalty. He wasn't against exacting, you know, justice and revenge on these people. It was that he knew that the government didn't have a case and that they had exacted a false confession through coercion.
I would have to imagine that you go into these type of projects not looking for anything other than to tell these stories, but you have to know the buzz is building. You have to know that people are loving the film, and it's getting great reviews. And you know, we're hopeful that we start seeing, you know, people recognizing this, and it's starting to happen. And I'm going to be pulling for you, Miss Foster. I want to see that nomination come out of this. But I got one last question. I know I'm running out of time. I've always wondered this.
Okay.
Where do you keep your Oscar?
Well, I used to keep it in my bathroom for years, but then
Really?
they started to corrode a little bit on the bottom. So I was like, I got to get it out of the moisture.
No.
So yeah, so it's in a library thing.
Well, maybe we'll have to make some room. But time will tell. Time will tell.